Hi everyone, this is Jess here. Thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel. So a little warning, this is a longer video, and actually it's my first video using voiceover, so bear with me that I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. Today I'm using the Love You Bunches set from Fawn, and I'm going to be creating my own background with Distress Oxide. The Distress Oxide color that I'm going to be using is Fossilized Amber, and I love this color because depending on how much water you have sprayed on the oxide, you're going to get a different color. So sometimes if it's bunched up, the pigment makes it almost like a little pink, which is really fun, or a really nice pale yellow, which is kind of what I'm going for since I'm creating a banana type of feel. And that'll all make sense the farther along we go in the video. The next step is to spray the sheet with water. And this will activate all the pigments in there, and it'll create the pools of different colors that I'm really looking for. And I could probably get the same effect if I used my watercolor brush, but I find that this is more of an organic, and I've heard that term a lot lately in crafting, but a more organic feel. Next step is just to lay down your watercolor paper right on top of all that ink. After the sheet is placed where you want it, you want to add some weight. And I always have a nice big acrylic block handy, and that's usually what I use. And I'll kind of move it around a little bit just to make sure I've distributed the ink evenly. The hardest part for me, honestly, is waiting. And you should probably wait a little while for the ink to absorb into the paper, but I tend to check it after just a few minutes. So what happens is you see the pool of ink in the corner. It didn't quite make it to the edge and it didn't quite soak in. So that's why I'm grabbing my paintbrush and I'm just moving the ink around in areas that I feel are a little bit dull. And what's great is I can hit that with my heat tool and kind of set that where it is, and it's going to stay really nice and dark and pigmented. And then I can just keep going. So I sped this part of the video up because it is a lot of playing around. And that's part of the fun of getting really inky, is you can pick up some more ink, put it down, set it with your tool, and then with this oxide you can layer upon layer upon layer, and you're still going to be able to see the variations in all of your different layers. Now that I have my yellow sheet the way I want it, I'm going to add some walnut stained Distress Oxide in a splatter pattern so that it looks like the brown spots on a super sweet banana. Another great tool that I have to have on my craft desk is the stamp chamois, because I make a mess and I need something to help me keep that mess contained. And the chamois does a wonderful job of wiping all of my surfaces clean and doing it in a swipe and keeping the ink where it's in the chamois. Now that I have all my colors and my splatter just the way I want it, I'm going to set it with my heat tool, and you'll notice I'm hitting the back of the sheet. And as I'm setting the front, I noticed that it was starting to curl. So I hit the back of it to kind of warp it the other way so it helps to keep it flat. Now that my background's done, it's time to start die cutting and putting everything together. So I'm going to grab my large dotted rectangles from Fawn, and I'm going to grab that largest piece. And I find that I use that size the most. And I'm just going to kind of position it where I think the color looks the best and kind of where the pattern would end up looking the best on my project. And I'm going to add some tape there just so it stays in place. And then I'm going to run it through my die cut machine. And here's a really fun tip. I don't know if you've ever run through your rectangles through straight and you hear that clunk clunk sound as you run it through. If you run your rectangles on a diagonal so that the point goes through first, you'll get much smoother results from your die cutting machine and your paper as it cuts than if you would have set it just straight through. Now, I am probably the worst crafter to be making videos because I really don't have many plans when I start creating a project. I have a general idea of the direction I'm going, but down to the details is really not my strong suit. So you're going to see me here laying out the pieces on my background, and that's the background that I knew I was going to start the project with. So now it's just putting all the extra pieces together. So I thought this monkey would look really cute, hanging upside down with some colorful leaves. And then a banana, of course, because it has to tie in with that really fun background. So I'm going to color these with Copic. So I'm going to use my Memento Tuxedo Black. And that's probably my favorite ink to use with Copics because it really has never failed me. So now here comes the coloring, and I'm going to speed through this because this is definitely not a coloring tutorial. I'm still pretty novice when it comes to Copic coloring. I know how to get my way around. I can add shadows here and there, but I'm not a very good, I guess, where do the shadows come from type of colorer. I love to blend colors, and I've found that it's really fun to combine colors that you wouldn't necessarily think go together. So for the bananas, I grabbed a Y11 for my lightest and a Y15 for my darker shadows, but I wanted some more depth. So I grabbed a Y26 to add some darker shadow colors in the darker areas, and it's a really nice gold. In order to make them look a little bit more seamless, I went back over with my Y11 so that I can blend out those colors and just give it that little bit of shiny banana feel. Now that the bananas are done, I'm going to move on to this cute little monkey. And for his fur, I want to add some movement and some shadow and some shine. So I'm going to be using E23, E25, and E27. And what I'm going to do is, I guess they call it the flicking technique. But anyway, you just take the edge of your marker and you flick it so that the center of your image has a lighter streak of color. And I'm going to layer all of those three colors in to kind of create a shine through the center of his body. And you'll see I do it all throughout the main part of his body and only adding just a little bit of darker shadow on his feet and in his tail. Now that I have the body of my furry little monkey done, I'm going to move on to his face, or I guess the mask. And what I did here is I kept my E23 marker because I love that color, but it's going to be the darkest color in my blend. And I'm going to grab an E33 to blend those together for his mask. And I actually found that it was a little too dark for my taste, but he's still really cute, so I just went with it. So I laid down my lightest color so that I could blend the two together really well since it's already saturated with color. And then I added the E23 just to the edges and I blended it forward. And I actually found that my first layer of E23 would have been okay if I just didn't mess with it. It's okay to have darker lines that aren't perfectly well blended because it ends up looking more like a shadow would instead of it being just kind of a blended color. So you live, you learn, you make mistakes, and you learn for next time. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the leaves and that vine. And this is a really funky combination of color. I I had found this color combination looking on Pinterest for different greens that I had in my stash that I could blend together. At the time, I was only combining, the G28s with the G20 somethings in order to get a blend, but it was all too monotone. So what I love about this one is you go from a lime green to a really dark green, and it blends actually really seamlessly. But it adds some intense shadows. It kind of makes it almost like 3D and shiny at the same time. So this is probably my favorite type of green to use for plants. With my coloring done, I'm going to add a little bit of shine with a white gel pen just at the top of the leaves, and then I love adding those 3 little dots on each side of the cheek to kind of add a whisker, a mark. And what I wanted to show you here is I had never used these dies before, and a lot of times when you get dies, it's kind of complicated on how to take them apart, but I thought this would be a really great opportunity to kind of show my tips and tricks on how to get them apart really easy. So a lot of dies you can bend them apart because they're only connected by 2 parts. But when you get to the center, this part is connected by 3 little bars. And what I find works best are flush cut wire snips. And all I do is I butt them as close as I can to the edge of that inner die, and then I'm left with a pretty smooth edge. And in order to get those last little bars off of those tiny bits, again, I just go right up to the edge. I give it a little wiggle and then I snap, and what that leaves me is a nice smooth edge, and I'll eventually do that to all of these pieces. Now that the pieces I need are separated, I'm going to put them on my Big Shot, and I have a magnetic platform which is really great for holding the dies where I need them, but I always add just a little bit of tape to make sure that there's no shifting when I put my plates right on top and run them through. And I love how the dies create just that extra little white border around it. It's like making your own sticker. It's really fun. Now that the pieces are cut, I'm going to lay them down on my card to see where their final position's going to be. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with the sentiment, so I'm just moving the bananas around until I find a position that I want them to live in. And then I grab a tiny strip of white cardstock, and I think I like having the sentiment right there at the bottom with the banana at the very front. So I'm going to grab the Walnut Stain Distress Oxide, and I'm going to use the I Find You Very Appealing sentiment. And in order to make that stamp straight, it's very flexible, so I'm not going to place it on my block because I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to curve that. But if I drop it down and I pick it up with the block, it's going to stay straight. To add an extra dimension to my card, I'm going to use foam tape to adhere everything down so that it pops up off the background. And this foam tape, this roll lasts forever. That one piece that I'm going to cut right here, it will last the entire project. So everything on my sheet is going to be put together with this one strip. And I'm going to cut it in half, and I use the diamonds on the back as kind of a guide. So I just go from diamond to diamond so that I can cut it straight. And that extra strip right there, I'm going to put on a slick surface, just my scissor guides, so that I can go back and use it anytime. In order to create the ends of my banner, I love this little trick. You go to the center of your sheet and you snip a little ways up, and as long as you go from corner to the very top of that tiny snip, you're going to have an even triangle that you cut out of there. I used to do this by hand without going from the center, and it never ended up looking nice. And once I realized this little trick, they always come out really nice. So then I'm going to add some multi-matte medium to the back of that peeled banana, and I'm going to put it on the very front of the sentiment. And you'll notice that I haven't trimmed it off yet, and I want to make sure that I put the banana where I need it to, and that when I cut the back, there's going to be enough paper on there for that multi-matte to stick on and stay strong, because I don't want the banana hanging over the edge. So I'm just going to give it a little press to make sure it's on there. And from the back, I can see where I'm going to need to cut it, and I just fold back the paper and cut just underneath. So what I'm left with is a piece that looks like it's all in one. And then I can just lay that aside and let that multi-matte dry a little bit. And then I can move on to putting foam tape on the rest of my pieces. So I'm going to add some foam tape to the vine, and you'll see here that I'm going to cut again with the guides. I'm going to go down the center of that strip, and I'm going to use those diamonds again to cut an even piece. And I'm going to go all the way down. And these are Teflon scissors, so when I'm cutting something sticky like foam tape, it's really no trouble. So I've got my tiny piece, and if you notice, it doesn't curve very well with the paper, but if you peel off the release paper, you can mold it into any shape you need. With all my pieces finally down, I give everything a good press, and of course I need to add some more shimmer. I grab my Wink of Stella in clear, and I'm going to go over the leaves and a little bit of the banana peel just to kind of add that little extra something special when they pick up the card. So I go over the vine and the leaves, and I love Wink of Stella because you can layer it on to just be a light, almost barely there shimmer, or you can really lay it on thick and it's going to be really sparkly. So now that I put all this work into my card front, it's time to put it on the card base. And this is a standard 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 folded sheet of Neenah cardstock. And I have the hardest time lining it up, and you can lay down your adhesive and you can walk them together, but I have this trouble lining them up. So what I do is I lay down my adhesive, and then I break out my score buddy, and I butt up the corners and line up the top and the side. And I find that when I do this, I don't ruin any fronts anymore. I used to lay them down and have to trim the sides, and then I would trim them uneven, but doing this, I get a good result every single time. With my card together, I'm going to add some sequins, and I have 3 different sizes of these crystal clear sequins. And there's really no formula to where I put them. I kind of put them in a diagonal from the bottom left to the top right, but that's just kind of something that I've always done. And I just rearrange them until it just kind of looks like it flows well, or it looks like I spilled them. And I guess that's the effect that everybody's trying to achieve. But in order to put them on, glue them down, I've tried everything. The multi-matte, the glossy accents. But what I really love to use are these micro glue dots, because I just stick them on and I stick them down. Because I admit a lot of times I would forget where I placed my sequins by the time I pick up the sequin, put the glue down, press the glue down, and I liked the instant gratification of picking up the card and kind of shimmering it around so I can see that sparkle. So glue dots really work great for me. The final bit of shine that I'm going to add to my card is a little bit of glossy accents, and I've really come to love glossy accents. So I'm going to add it to the banana, and I'm going to add it to the leaves. And usually I store my bottle upside down, and I haven't had any clogs, but there are a few air bubbles if I don't squeeze out all the air when I store it from the last project. But I squeeze it out on a piece of scrap paper, and then it flows well, and I don't have any trouble with it. So I just added it to the banana, and I'm going to add it to the leaves. And I was originally going to just add it to the big leaf, but I figured, why not? We'll add it to both. So you'll see me here just kind of dabbing it on. And then I continued on. So my crafts just flow. It just goes off of inspiration. So my original plan hardly ever pans out the way it was planned out. Now that the front of the card has gotten all the love, I like to add a little bit something special to the back. I ordered this custom handmade by Jessica stamp set on Etsy, and I love it. I try to stamp it. I do sometimes forget. I try to stamp it on all of my cards because I'm proud of what I make out of my little craft closet. So I want everybody to know that, you know, these came from a place of true happiness for me. So I lay it down and I hold it there while I'm cleaning everything up so that I can make sure that the image is good. Because when I work so hard on this card, the last thing I want is for a smudge or an imperfect imprint on the back of my card. So then that's it. That is all that there is to that card, and that was so much fun to make. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching my video. It means a lot, and I hope to see you next time.